My message to the country is this. We are a nation of immigrants, and America is an idea. Sure, there are a couple of burned cars and people are waving other countries' flags, but that's L.A. That's what L.A. is about. Dance like nobody's watching, love like you've never been hurt, and skateboard like your dad isn't in prison.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control.
It is the BJ Show. Good morning, John Combest.
Good morning, Brad Hildebrand.
I have a couple questions for you as the show goes on, but first off, some technical stuff. Apologize about the streaming being down yesterday. I'm not going to get all sorts of crazy, weird gobbledygook, but it comes down to me not updating the Windows on the computer, and for some crazy reason, when it doesn't take the latest update, our streaming computer doesn't shut down, it just doesn't stream it anymore, and it's supposed to email me and text me and tell me when it's not streaming, but it didn't do that. It does that whenever I have to update the software. All I have to do is just go in, turn the computer off, reboot the computer, put the new software up, the new update for Windows 10, and it works. So it's back up and running today, and I'm sorry. Normally I check that on a daily basis, but I missed it yesterday. Do you accept my apology, John?
Absolutely, Brad.
That is John Combest. Every single day of his life, he puts together this important information that you know about. Matter of fact, he has a cornucopia of information on his website at johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. You know how John spelled. You know how .com spelled. I don't have to go through that. Every single day, what we do is, as we do this on NPR, we curate his top three. We pick out the dozens of stories on his johncombest.com site, and we give you the top three, and we start with this gentleman who leads us through the curation.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we start off with...
In third place...
I grab a 40, rip off the skirt, and guzzle it. Grab the mic and come out the woodwork. When stuff's thick and no time to think, Keith Murray gets busy off a basic instinct. I puff a L and drink some liquor. Sit down, write a jam, never see the mother bleeping sticker. With God as my witness, with the sickness of a cannibalist, cannabis I flows like a cumulus. That was Keith Murray in 1994. A song called Get Lifted. And Keith was talking about guzzling a 40 ounce of malt liquor and then having a little bit of cannabis, maybe a little smoky cannabis treat. Well, according to Rebecca Rivas in the new Missouri Independent website update, which you can find at johncombest.com, you don't need to combine a 40 ounce of malt liquor and a little bit of smoky cannabis. No, you can just get your high in one bottle. And according to an industry group, if Missouri were to expand and provide a little bit of, regulatory framework around THC drinks, the state could bring in $75 million of drink sales. Now, that doesn't mean tax revenue of $75 million to the state necessarily, but it means there could be $75 million market of drunks, that was Freudian, of drinks that could get you a little high. So you and I have discussed many times on this show the differing proposals about cannabis and hemp and drinks and edibles and snacks and the regulatory fight. And Miss Rivas puts together a really good summary of it again, Brad. And then I would point people toward the end of the story. Rebecca reaches out to a gentleman named Brian Regal, and he's been quoted in a number of pieces about the cannabis industry, and in fact, in the mainstream hemp industry as well. He has a hemp farm just outside of Washmo. And here's his quote. Here's what he says. This year, Regal says he's excited about initiative petitions that would ask voters next year to allow marijuana and intoxicating hemp products to be sold in the same stores as alcohol and tobacco. And he hopes lawmakers, at a minimum, will pass requirements on age gating, child-proof packaging, and making sure every package identify who is the manufacturer and distributor. Excuse me. And here's the direct quote from him. Those are three very minimalistic things that should be a no-brainer to get things done. and will cost nobody anything, but could give law enforcement the proper channels to penalize somebody if they're misbehaving. Now, Brad, you and I are not known to beat dead horses. So we're going to put that cane away here. And a new angle on this, I was kind of mapping it out in my brain this morning. And you have a really good sense of this stuff, Brad. So kick the tires of this idea. I see 4 groups here among people that actually care about like cannabis stuff. I see people, picture the guy that wants to avoid all emotions from his wife or girlfriend, that just wants to go through a drive-through at night and get his edibles. He doesn't care about what's legal, what's not legal. He just wants to be able to drive through after work and escape the pressures of his harpy wife, right? So you got one group of people that don't really care, that just want their cannabis. You got another group of people who you could consider today's established marijuana, some would call it a monopoly, and they want to have a really strong gate around their enterprise and their business, and they want to keep undesirables out. And then you have a third group of people who are very pro-hemp and pro-cannabis, but they're not in that in crowd. They're not in the group of folks that are raking in millions of dollars in the industry, and they want a piece of this. They want a little bit of regulation that says, hey, I can sell at a convenience store, and we do have protections for kids. And then you have a fourth group of people that says, I don't like any of this stuff. I think it's all pretty stupid, and I pretty much don't care. Now, to me, Brad, those are really the 4 camps of people. What do you think of that?
John, you don't want to know what I think. It's to the point where I just don't get this.
Now,
thing.
you say and Brad, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you always say blow the whole thing open.
Yeah.
And I think that we've explored that. But I think that this third group, maybe my bias here, is that the third group, for example, Mr. Regal in the story, tends to make a lot of sense. He says, okay, if it's going to be the Wild West, which is what it is today, maybe add some child protections. Like, you can't make it look like a box of Fruit Loops with Toucan Sam on it, and it's really a cannabis product. But there's got to be, to me, that third group is pretty persuasive, because they say, hey, we might have been left out of the established market, but we're just selling a lower grade of intoxicant here. Why can't we sell it at Total Wine and Spirits?
I say, like you just said, what I've said in the past, blow the whole thing open. But what you do is you have a government card that you have to buy everything, including cocaine and heroin and meth and stuff like that. And the government card, when you sign it, you have to sign it in front of a person. You have to have, a notarized signature and the whole bit. Essentially states that you understand the dangers of partaking in these drugs, cocaine, all the different things, and you hereby release the state from helping you. And if you are found on the side of the road with a faint heartbeat and you've OD'd in cocaine, the paramedics would check your card. They would see your card. Oh, okay, we'll just let him die. And they just throw him in the back.
And I mean, that's pretty much the disclaimer that you have on your helium tank in the studio, right?
I don't see. It's John, this is like, there's a term that I used years ago, which I find fascinating, which is used so much today. It's called incrementalism. You don't just say one day, hey, we're going to all drive on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road like they do in England. But what starts to happen is you get these crazy little overpasses, like if you've been in St. Charles, at the 5th Street, I-70, underpass there. Same thing at Dorset and 270. You know what I'm talking about, where you go through these, they call them diverging diamonds. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you mean. And isn't there one around like maybe Mugie too?
Yes, and essentially what happens is, if you've never been through them before, you drive on the wrong side of the road, which essentially, you go through.
It's unnatural, right? Brad. I feel like a Brit.
Yes, you feel like, what am I doing? It's one of those weird feelings like, I'm on the left side of the road. I should be on the right side of the road. Okay, that's incrementalism, and if you really want to know, that's because, matter of fact, I don't know if you know this or not, but Adam Schnelting is working on that so that what's going to happen is he's going to change all the highways so he'll have the left lane to himself, because everybody thinks they're going to be driving on the wrong side of the highway, but he'll actually be in the right lane, which people will think is the slow lane, but it actually is the fast lane. Get what I'm saying, John? It doesn't make any sense.
And by the way, Adam did propose that legislation because he saw the new standards for the Super Freedom Caucus. Yeah. And he's still wanting to get into the Super Freedom.
John, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a marijuana user. I drink once in a blue moon. I've never, and I'm the kind of guy that's like, okay, you know what? I get it. If you want to, toke all day long and gets high, that's fine. I don't really care. Just don't be out in the roads and don't smash into my car stoned out of your brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, stoned out of your gourd.
Right. I don't know. But the thing that's interesting to me is we think we have things taken care of, which is interesting because that's part of my top 3 this morning, which you have to help me with because I am totally confused and you're going to try to help me. We think we have everything ironed out, but we don't. And you've just made
Are you talking about redistricting, Brad?
Yes, I am.
And now, Brad, you might want to rejigger or we'll pause stuff because in my top 3,
you're doing
we
it
talk
too.
about redistricting.
Okay, well, I may have to.
But let's get to number 2 first.
I may have to rejigger. Okay, the bottom line of that is I don't really know anymore, John. I mean, and what does my opinion mean to anybody? Nothing. Well,
I don't know. You are a leader in the ditchweed industry. For folks who are looking for more on this, go to johncombest.com today, and I have a link to, Brad, you and I have had lengthy discussions with the great Eapen Thampy, and Eapen discusses the 2026 ballot proposal that folks might get a chance to vote on. But until then, let's get to story number 2, Brad.
John, let me end this by saying you gave your 4 different options. I say it's all about the Benjamins. That's all it's about. It's all about the Benjamins.
Brad, I would agree. There's always money involved.
It's all about the Benjamins. Okay, here's number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Jonathan All from St. Louis Public Radio. You might remember his name from generally reporting down in the Rolla area. And Brad could give a long and meandering dissertation on the relationship between KWMU and the Rolla station. But we'll save that for a different time. The headline from Mr. All. In reversal, Phelps County Jail resumes taking in ICE detainees. Now, without getting into the nitty-gritty of this too far, I'll just give you a general timeline here. For quite a while, the folks at Phelps County were taking in ICE detainees. I should be more accurate. I said quite a while. They started taking in ICE detainees as part of the mass deportation efforts. Phelps County started taking them in March. And then in August, they stopped taking them. And they said that the money that they were getting reimbursed, which was $85 a night, they were spending more on labor, transportation, getting them a grilled cheese sandwich or whatever basic low-level, lowest common denominator food they feed these folks. They said that it didn't make any more sense for them to take in ICE detainees. And now they've reversed course. Now, uniquely, Brad, Mr. All reached out to them and said, hey, why the flip-flop? And no one at the jail is talking. I guess we can just assume that maybe they found out a way to do it more efficiently. Or maybe they said, well, we're not making much on every detainee, but maybe we can squeeze them a little harder and make this work economically. Now, of course, in the public interest, Mr. All talks to some folks called, well, I started to say Labor of Love, but there's a group that writes pen pal letters to them, and their name is Abide in Love. We talked to them before. They encourage people to be pen pals with these alleged illegal alien detainees. And so now the folks of Abide in Love are gearing up, Brad, because they're going to have some more fresh meat to write love letters to.
John, I don't understand the whole thing. I mean, I do understand it. We've talked about this before. I learned my lesson from Sean Hayes, who, when I interviewed him years ago about the book he wrote, he said he spent 14 months in the Warren County Jail when he was being prosecuted by the federal court system. And I say, oh, how did you end up in the Warren County Jail? And the reason for that is, at least up until a couple years ago, it may have changed. the federal government has no federal detention facility in the St. Louis area. So what they do is they use the various county jails, like in this case, they use Warren County and the Phelps County and things like that, and they pay them for that. Now, I'm thinking to myself, $85 a night, you pay me $85 a night, I can live a good life. You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Brad. But you know what? I thought the same thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought the same thing. But then I thought, I wonder how much the jail is on the hook for transportation. Like, did the Fed say, hey, you got to come down here and pick up these 6 guys? Is it worth it with gas and labor? You get what I'm saying?
I don't know, but you would think, you see the ICE vans and things like that, you would think that the feds would deliver the people to the jail. Don't you think? Don't you think the ICE vans would take these guys to the various jails and then, take them into here's a term for you, take them to the Sally Port. You know what a Sally Port is?
No, I don't. It sounds like a place that Sally wants me to stick my thumb.
No, the Sally Port. If you're in law enforcement, you know exactly what a Sally Port is. But I would think they deliver them to them. I don't think the Phelps County.
I don't know. I think you're biased because you see a lot of ICE vans and trucks going to the family arena, but that's the ICE capades, bro.
And by the way, the technical nerd in me, there's a big controversy about the ice capades and Disney on Ice. If you want to talk about that, maybe in C Block we'll talk about that, because they're getting rid of union jobs, which I found sort of fascinating because it's a technical thing. Okay, ready for number 1?
Yeah, let's do it, Brad.
The number 1.
In the category of picking Brad's pocket and dipping into his top 3, I'll just bogart it from you, Brad, to use a cannabis term. From Jason Rosenbaum, he writes a column, he calls it an occasional column, for St. Louis Public Radio called On the Trail. Rosenbaum's headline, Missouri Republicans learn that redrawing congressional lines isn't so easy. Now, we have talked quite a bit over the last several months about redistricting, the idea that Missouri Republicans, some would say heavily influenced by President Donald Trump, are doing a rare mid-decade redrawing. And so many questions here. Is it even legal for the legislature to do a mid-decade redrawing when they just did it 3 years ago? AG Catherine Hanaway says one thing, top Democrat attorneys say another. Rosenbaum covers these topics, of course, and he covers what could be that statewide vote next year on whether we have new congressional districts or not. But, a lot of that has been covered before. What I think Rosenbaum does a great job doing is going to some Republicans and having a conversation with some Republicans who aren't all too crazy about this idea. One quote is from Representative Jim Murphy. He's a well-liked, well-respected Republican from South St. Louis County. Here's his quote. I wish I hadn't had to vote for it, but I don't regret my vote. I see what other states have done, and it's appalling. Tit for tat is not a good way to run a state or a county for that matter, or a country for that matter. But unfortunately, it's the environment. Now, he, of course, is referring to what Illinois has done and California and then Texas retaliating, et cetera. And then Jason also reaches out to Rep. Bryant Wolfen. He's from St. Genevieve. He voted against the redistricting plan. And he said that he didn't even know that a referendum on the new district lines was even possible. And he says, quote, I guarantee the majority of the caucus did not as well. So the last time we talked about this, we talked about how Governor Kehoe does a good job having it both ways, the best of both worlds. He can say that he did whatever he could to get new districts for Donald Trump. But you know what? Voters of the state next year might get a chance to vote on it, and they might reject the new laws. It seems, Brad, it seems that Republicans are some Republicans are a little bit tepid on these new congressional districts.
And here's my question to you, John. This is why it's so confusing. Right now, what congressional map is in effect in the state of Missouri?
Right now, the new districts are in effect because Governor Kehoe signed the bill. So the new congressional districts, as I understand it, are in effect. But what is almost guaranteed, I mean, as far as I can see, what's almost guaranteed is that a judge will step in sometime between now and filing, which is February, and say, look, we're throwing these lines out, or that the opponents have gathered enough signatures that the new districts are on hold until Missouri voters vote on it. You get what I'm saying?
I read this article, and I think it was probably part of the same thing you're talking about. That was going to be part of my top three, where they're talking about the petition signature initiative, and they're saying they're going to have enough of them, and they're essentially saying that exactly what you just said. With the deal with the petitions, they're going to get 100,000 in 6 of the 8 congressional Missouri districts. They'll get that, and then essentially that will put the thing on the back burner, so it won't become effective, if it does become as effective, until sometime after the November 2026 election. Is that pretty much?
You're exactly right. It would be in effect after that. So it wouldn't have any consequence. And Jason quotes the longtime top Republican consultant, John Hancock, who says, quote, "I'll be surprised if come filing in February, this thing is resolved in such a way that the new lines are governing." So in other words, they may be in effect now because Governor Kehoe signed the bill, but they won't actually be in effect practically.
So the answer to my question is we don't know. Then correct?
The answer is we don't know. And I know we're a little bit over time here, Brad. I will point people uniquely. Yesterday we discussed the Riverfront Times, and I have to confess something to you, Brad. When I said I wonder what happened to a lot of the great journalism, I was already working on a project where I saved to republish one of the best pieces of political journalism, long-term political journalism, that was done by the great DJ Wilson in 2002. It was a profile of Democrat, consultant, fundraiser extraordinaire, and philanthropist Joyce Aboussie. And I linked to it on my website today, Brad, because in 2001 and 2002, around that era, the Missouri Democratic Party redrew, some would say, gerrymandered black votes away from Lacey Clay and into the district of Dick Gephardt. Democrats weren't too opposed to gerrymandering when it was Dick Gephardt and Joyce Aboussie, but now all of a sudden they don't like gerrymandering, Brad. Folks can find that long-form journalism in a 7-part series that I meticulously documented and uploaded to johncombest.com. You can find that link today, johncombest.com.
John, I know we're over time, and I'll take it out of my top three, but let me ask you this question, okay?
Yeah.
I said, why can't they redistrict district number 1 with, we now have Wesley Bell, which is predominantly black, and you said
1965 Voting Rights Act.
Right, but how are they able to do this on the other side of the state? Because aren't they taking away voters from that
because
district?
That's not a designated Voting Rights Act district, Brad. Just because there's a lot of black people standing around or sitting on the street corner doesn't mean they're a special minority district.
So on the east side of the state, we have a special minority district, but on the west side of the state, we have the same situation, but we don't have a special minority district. Is that what you're saying?
You're exactly right, Brad.
Does that make any sense to you?
It does. I think it involves math, and it involves very specific law about what a designated minority voting rights district looks like.
Oh, man, it just,
And really, Brad, do you think Kansas City is as great as St. Louis?
I think it's better, quite honestly. I really do. I think, like one of my 2 sons lives in Kansas City.
Did you ever spend time over there, Brad?
I did.
Did your son ever live just across the state line?
Yes, I have a friend of mine that runs the country club district, whatever, in downtown Kansas City, and I see her from time to time. She's on the news, and she's being featured in some of the TV stations and things like that.
Is her name Merrill Hansen?
No, her name is Kate Marshall, and I've known her for a long time, and she's a big fan of this district. She's fallen in love. You know what I'm talking about, and she's really doing some great things. And this is in the city of Kansas City, and she's got money behind her. In the form of businesses that are supporting her. She's got a bank that is bankrolling some of the work she does and stuff like that. And I look at that, and she's got people cooperating with her, government's cooperating with her. And then I look at St. Louis, and I go like, okay, nobody has any cooperation whatsoever. Everybody's out for their own little, piece of turf.
Fiefdom.
Right,
They're
little
fiefdom.
fiefdom. And I'm going, okay, I don't get it. Okay. But I do understand that because, remember, I told you that story years ago I read that if you understand the fact that it's all about territorialism, you'll understand how people work and how people have wars, and it's all about territory.
I know, that's why we war over your top three, because I go in there and I pillage in one of your top three, Brad.
You do. You grabbed one, and I have to change it. Okay,